They were the kings of the Sunset Strip, the undisputed champions of decadence and rock and roll excess. For 4 decades, Motley Crue carved out a unique and enduring space in modern music, built on a raw, anthemic sound that felt both dangerous and thrillingly immediate. They are, by any measure, one of the last true larger-than-life rock success stories. But for a band that has reached such heights, their journey is way more than just a story of musical triumph. It's also a story littered with feuds, insults, and burned bridges. From backstage brawls with fellow rock royalty to bitter internal betrayals that tore them apart from the inside, Nicky, Vince, Tommy, and Mick have a remarkable knack for making enemies. So what is it about this quartet from Hollywood that leads to so much conflict? Are they simply a product of a more violent era, a group of blunt-speaking rockers in an industry of fake smiles? Or maybe, just maybe, the chaos was really never a bug, it was a feature. Today, let's take a look at the complete history of Motley Crue's biggest feuds. I'll discuss the backstage punches, the public tirades, and the courtroom battles that have defined their career almost as much as their music. Before we get started with today's video, if you guys want to support my channel, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button. The story of Motley Crue starts long before the sold-out stadiums and the pyrotechnics. The journey starts simply on the grimy, electric streets of the Sunset Strip. By the late 80s, 2 of the most popular bands were Motley Crue and Guns N' Roses. Guns had even partied with and opened for Motley Crue in 1987. Frontman Axl Rose even joined Vince Neil on stage, performing the AC/DC track Whole Lotta Rosie. But a few years later, the relationship soured between the band.
We were at the Cat House. I was there with Charisse, who was Vince's girl at the time, and Izzy grabbed her breast.
He kicked her in the stomach while she was pregnant. I was pissed. I said, next time I see the guy, I'm going to kick his ass.
Fast forward to the 1989 VMAs, where Vince made good on his word.
We're walking off the stage, and Vince Neil leaps up out of the audience and hits Izzy right in the face.
He made a move, and so I clocked him.
Chaos soon erupted. Axl never went to back down, came snarling like an overdressed Doberman, according to Vince, and threatened to kill the frontman. The backstage brawl quickly escalated into a public war of words.
Have you patched up your differences with Vince Neil and the boys? And he had a scuffle last year backstage at the...
Oh, no way.
No? Oh, okay.
No way. I haven't patched up anything.
The video backstage
What's the dispute there?
Well, I mean, they think... I've read in the interviews of theirs that they feel this like I'm just, you know, standing up for Izzy and stuff, but Vince should be careful what golf courses he's mouthing off about Axl on and who he's playing golf with. You know, when he goes out playing golf, mouths off about Axl, and he happens to be playing golf with people that work for me, stories come back. You know, and, you know, he likes to put in magazines that he broke Izzy's nose, or, you know, and how Alan Niven wasn't even there, my manager, or anything like that, and no one was around. I don't know. We didn't want to take it to court because it would be too much trouble and too much hassle, but when, you know, Tom Petty's security crew wants to be witnesses in court, you know, it's funny because Izzy's like going, because people think it's going to happen sooner or later or whatever, and it's like that Vince and I'll get into it or something, you know, and Izzy laughs because he's like, that guy, you know, had a full-on free shot, you know, and hit like a powder puff, you know, and he was like, so it's like, it's pretty scary if the guy thinks about a real hassle. You know, I put in a magazine, you know, anytime he wants it anywhere, Atlantic City, I don't care. We'll put money on it, you know. I don't care, you know, and then he tried to turn it around and say the same thing, but, you know, the invitation's there. I'm easy to find. If you really want a hassle, you know, we can have it out.
After mulling that over for, well, almost a year, Vince Neil, who's reportedly just separated from his wife Charisse, sat down with MTV News this week and issued this challenge.
He said a lot of bad things about me the last few years, and a lot of threats. And even on, I remember one of your guys' shows before the MTV Awards, and where he said, well, anytime, any place, and right now, I want to put an end to this, and what I want is, Axl, if you're watching this, I want to challenge you to a fight. I'm going to give you the time, and I'm going to give you the place, and there's no backing out now, buddy, and it's time to put up or shut up. I'd like to do it at an arena where people can come and see. I'd like to have it televised. I want the whole world to see this fight. And It's gonna be. I think it'll be great. I'm really psyched for it because I need to put an end to this. So there's no more. I mean, it'll end it once and for all. Any bad blood between us.
The epic brawl, though, never happened. It was said that the Guns N' Roses track Shotgun Blues on Use Your Illusion 2 was actually written as a diss track to Vince. It was also reported that both Sammy Hagar and Eddie Van Halen offered to put up their own money to stage the fight at Madison Square Garden, but it ended up going nowhere, of course.
I'd like to see the fight, though. Can I get front row tickets? I'll ref. I don't know, I'll be in the corner. I don't know, I want to be there. I like fights. That's my favorite sport. I love it.
Young people. Wow. Guys. What is Don King doing?
The feuds just simply died down. Then fast forward to around the time Guns N' Roses' long-awaited album 2008's Chinese Democracy came out. Vince stated at the time, the thing about Guns N' Roses is it's not really Guns N' Roses. If Slash and Duff were still in it, I'd be a little more excited. Hopefully it's a good album. I hope it's worth it because they spent a lot of money and a lot of time on it. I like to record in 2 weeks, so I never second guess myself. Fast forward to 2014, Vince posted, then removed a Facebook diss of Axl after Guns N' Roses frontman was described as the world's best singer according to a concerthotels.com list. Now keep in mind, this is Vince Neil laughing at someone else's singing. Moving on to our next feud. Despite both emerging out of Los Angeles, Motley Crue and Metallica were not part of the same circles, and by Lars Ulrich and frontman James Hetfield's own admissions, they used their distaste for glam metal as a drive for their own determination.
It was 1982 and Motley Crue had just put out Too Fast for Love. I remember one night out in front of the Troubadour, we're standing there in our Iron Maiden t-shirts, and it was like, after a couple of, Colts or Schlitz malt liquors or whatever, it was like, you saw like Nikki and Tom, it was like, Motley Crue. I remember Nikki Sixx started chasing after me, and the one thing I could do, because 5'6" of me, I could run faster than he could in his 16-inch platform boots, so it wasn't a contest there.
LA just didn't treat us well. We had this aggressive style, and I recall at the Troubadour, there was a security guy throwing chairs at us, at sound check, going, "Get out of here, you punks." They thought we were punk rock, We'd be up on stage playing, and people were fluffing their hair over at the bar. And that's not what music was for us. We're gonna play louder, we're gonna play faster. We want some attention. So really, all the posers in LA.
The war of words wouldn't resurface until 1997 when Lars criticized Motley Crue for playing using a backing tape during the Billboard Music Awards, and Crue bassist Nikki Sixx responded, putting out a statement on an online forum saying, "Dear sweet fat balding Lars, love the makeup babe. Taking your ever moronic soapbox position on a subject that's none of your fucking business has made you out to be an expletive as usual. Considering that I and Tommy know that your live tapes have been re-recorded and all your instruments were repaired in Pro Tools, and had the balls to lie to your fans and call it a live album. People in glass houses shouldn't throw rocks. Considering your bull the press, we feel it's only fair to return the punch. You're such a poser. Thanks for releasing that load of expletive CD of yours." Unfortunately, though, for the Crue, their new album, their first with Vince Neil in nearly 8 years, Generation Swine, was a commercial and critical flop. The feud seemed to die down nearly within a few years, as Nikki Sixx actually ended up defending Metallica's album Saint Anger against the angry fan reaction, and even praised the band's dedication to their live shows during a 2015 interview reminiscing the time both bands shared a festival bill. But I do want to point out that in 2015, drummer Tommy Lee did post a meme of Lars Ulrich with the text I read straight out of Tempo. It was the same year that Vince Neil went on a radio show in Portland, Oregon, where he was asked about the feud with Metallica, and it was something he didn't want to talk about. And when the DJ pressed him for more information on it, Neil basically hung up on him. In the mid-90s, Motley Crue made one of the most polarizing moves of their career when they replaced Vince Neil with vocalist John Corabi. The swap didn't just change the frontman, it shifted the band's entire vibe towards a heavier, grungier sound that divided their fan base. That era was short-lived, though, and by 1996, Corabi was out of the band, reportedly pushed aside after label pressure to bring Vince Neil back into the fold. For a long time after his exit, Corabi kept things relatively respectful when talking about the band, but that changed once Nikki Sixx started downplaying the Corabi years and criticizing his contributions to the group's 1994 self-titled album and interview. Corabi later even recalled speaking with Vince Neil about those comments, and Neil basically shrugged it off, telling Corabi, "You know how Nikki is." Moving on to our next feud. In a 2022 interview with the New York Times, Pearl Jam frontman Eddie Vedder explained how he used to work in a club in San Diego in the 90s and saw a lot of bands pass through, with a particular one he disliked a lot. He stated, "I'd end up being at shows that I wouldn't have chosen to go, bands that monopolized late 80s MTV. The metal bands that, I'm trying to be nice, I despise. Girls, 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 and Motley Crue. I hated it. I hated how it made the fellas look. I hated how it made the women look. It felt so vicious." Well, bassist Nikki Sixx wasn't about to let Vedder have the last word here, so he took to X to share what he thought of Pearl Jam. He wrote, "Made me laugh today reading about how much the singer in Pearl Jam hated Motley Crue. Now, considering that they're one of the most boring bands in history, it's kind of a compliment, isn't it?" Well, Vedder then took a playful live shot at Crue's stadium theatrics. At a solo show with Chad Smith on drums, he pointed to the drum kit and joked that it doesn't need to rise or spin to do its job, a clear dig at Tommy Lee's infamous spinning drum rigs. After the back and forth between Eddie and Nikki, Pearl Jam guitarist Stone Gossard came out and actually struck a diplomatic tone and believed there was room for both bands to coexist in rock and roll. On to our next feud. Steel Panther's whole shtick is playing dress up as an 80s glam band, but pushed so far into absurdity that it becomes a comedy act. Personally, I love it, and I've been to one of their shows, and they put on a great concert. They borrow the big hair, sleazy riffs, and outrageous lyrics you'd associate with bands like Motley Crue, yet the intent is more a love letter to the era than pure mockery. The problem is not everyone from the era sees it that way. Drummer Stick Zadinia has said that when Steel Panther toured with Motley Crue in 2011, Tommy Lee and Nikki Sixx weren't particularly amused. He described it as the only tour where they genuinely felt unwelcome. In his eyes, those guys thought they were being personally targeted, when Steel Panther sees what they do as a broader parody of the whole glam scene, not a specific attack on Motley Crue. Tensions escalated years later when frontman Michael Starr cracked a now infamous joke in this interview.
Bring back Vince Neil.
He's not dead.
I bring back the Vince Neil from back in the day.
Oh, that guy's
Yeah,
dead.
because that guy's dead. He's
Dude,
gone.
You'd bring back John Bonham, dude.
Oh, my God. You know what? I would be too intimidated.
Nikki Sixx hit back on social media telling the singer in Steel Panther to go f himself and calling them a wannabe band that gets attention by putting Vince down. Steel Panther, of course, didn't just eat that quietly. They leaned into the feud online, sharing and commenting on old footage of Motley Crue members taking digs at Vince themselves. One of the clips they amplified was a vintage MTV interview where the band made snarky remarks about Neil and his issues, underlying the irony that Crue felt so offended by an outsider joke that they'd historically aired their own grievances in public.
But did they care when their former bandmates sustained several broken ribs and internal injuries while jet skiing a few weeks ago?
My heart goes out to you. What happened to the coral reef?
Oh, man. Hey, when 300 pounds of blubber land on the coral reef, you know there was some dust flying around.
You're invited, but I weigh a ton.
Oh, okay, here we go. Great. Now you know that's going to be run.
By resurfacing that old interview, Steel Panther were basically saying, "You've clowned your own singer on camera, but we're the villains in making this joke." Our next story goes back a few years to the 2009 Crue Fest 2 tour, where Godsmack were one of the supporting acts. Now, Godsmack's drummer Shannon Larkin explained in his view that the main friction came from the Crue's security team, though Nikki Sixx got blamed because he's the band's figurehead. Larkin recalled an incident where the security literally kicked Godsmack off the stage, which he dismissed as pure ego drama none of them wanted to be part of. Larkin also said that the Crue's security acted strangely territorial about Godsmack's guests backstage, as if those guests were only there to gawk at Motley Crue. From Godsmack's side, their guests were there to see them and didn't really care about getting near Motley Crue's members, even though they all respected Motley as legends and had grown up liking their albums like Shout at the Devil. What rubbed them the wrong way was that the assumption that everyone around them would be automatically starstruck by Motley Crue, and the attitude is what really sparked the bad blood. Frontman Sully Erna didn't take that quietly. Over time, he started letting little jabs slip in interviews about how some older bands treated them like dirt on that tour. He never said Motley Crue by name, but fans connected the dots pretty fast. The tension simmered for a few years, but Godsmack found a more creative way to answer back. In 2010, Godsmack dropped the album The Oracle, and one track stood out, Crying Like a Bitch.
So between you guys and us, we can, make these people get a bang for their buck, and that's really what entertainment has always been about. And so I've never been in a position before where we felt we had to really protect this thing, you know? It's kind of like a dog with a bone, man. It's like you put us up against a wall, we're going to come out swinging. If there's going to be some people that are going to treat other people a certain way, then I'm going to go out there every night and crush you on stage, make sure that we make you look old and fat.
Well, they've never confirmed that it was actually written about me or not, so I don't know. I had a great time. The singer in Godsmack was complaining about me, basically. They say he wrote a song about me, but he's never confirmed it, so we would just be gossiping, you know, so I don't know if it's true.
For most up-and-coming bands, landing a spot on tour with Motley Crue is the kind of opportunity that can, well, change everything. It means bigger crowds, more exposure, and the sense that you've earned a place alongside rock royalty. Twin brothers Roger and Logan Raskin, performing as the Raskins, clearly saw it that way when they reportedly paid $1 million to secure a slot on Motley Crue's 2014 tour, which also featured Alice Cooper. But whatever excitement they had didn't last long. Just 2 years later, the Raskins took legal action against Motley Crue, claiming the experience turned into what they described as a nightmare. According to reports, the band sought more than $30 million in damages, alleging a long list of issues during that tour. They claimed they were often playing to half-empty venues because the doors weren't open on time, they were blocked from selling merchandise, and were denied access to dressing rooms. The lawsuit also accused members of the crew of harassment and even physical intimidation, along with claims that their performances were deliberately sabotaged. One of the more bizarre accusations involved crew members allegedly running on stage during a set and spraying the band with what they described as urine-filled water guns. The Raskins also claimed that when they raised concerns with tour management, they were met with hostility instead of help. According to the lawsuit, a representative allegedly warned them outright that their lives on the road would be made miserable. While the lawsuit was filed, there was no public record of what came out of it. Moving on to our next story. For Mudvayne and Hell Yeah frontman Chad Gray, his problem with Motley Crue isn't rooted in a beef or jealousy. It actually comes from a place of fandom. He's talked openly about how important the band was to him growing up and how he wants to protect the way he remembers them at their peak, not the way he feels about how they look now. On a 2022 podcast, he described hearing Motley Crue's Live Wire from their debut album Too Fast for Love and how it blew his mind and helped steer him towards heavier music. But despite that early influence, he didn't hold back when it came to their current incarnation, saying that the band either needs to step up their game or step aside altogether, especially when it comes to the vocals. At the same time, he admitted that as a vocalist himself, he understands how age naturally changes a singer's range and power. For him, it's not trash talking, it's about how hard it is to watch a huge part of his musical upbringing fade into something he barely recognizes anymore. The feud between Motley Crue and Hanoi Rocks stems from the tragic 1984 car crash that killed Hanoi Rocks drummer Razzle, with Motley Crue vocalist Vince Neil being behind the wheel while driving under the influence in Redondo Beach, California. The long-standing animosity intensified when Motley Crue released a 2003 box set titled Music to Crash Your Car To, Volume 1, which Hanoi Rocks members Michael Monroe and Andy McCoy condemned as tasteless exploitation of Razzle's death. McCoy has repeatedly accused Nikki Sixx of lying about events in the band's autobiography The Dirt and its Netflix adaptation, claiming he never received an apology from Vince Neil and that Sixx fabricated stories about his heroin overdose. The conflict escalated in 2022 when McCoy claimed that he saved Nikki Sixx's life after an overdose but never received any gratitude, calling the bassist a second-class citizen who only cares about money. McCoy also alleged that Sixx's version of being beaten with a baseball bat by a London dealer during an overdose was false, insisting he was the one who revived him. Sixx fired back on social media, suggesting McCoy times his public criticisms to promote his own projects, and sarcastically noted he never thanked McCoy for supplying him with drugs during his addiction. Despite the decades of bad blood, Hanoi Rocks frontman Michael Monroe reported having a touching and wonderful encounter with Motley Crue members at a 2023 festival, suggesting some possibility of a reconciliation. For more than 4 decades, guitarist Mick Mars has been the quietly ferocious backbone of Motley Crue, both on stage and in the studio. He never chased the same tabloid spotlights as Vince Neil, Tommy Lee, or Nikki Sixx, but his jagged riffs and distinctive gritty tone were absolutely central to what fans think of when they hear the name Motley Crue. In 2022, a representative announced that the guitarist would step away from touring because of his long-running health issues. The band's public statement, however, made it sound like he was retiring from the group entirely, and that's where the story started to fracture. Not long after, the tension boiled over into a full-blown legal war. Mars accused the band of pushing him out, cutting him off from future earnings, and claimed he was the only one still playing his parts fully live, while their side argued that once he stopped touring, he'd effectively quit and was struggling to perform. In interviews, Mars said that he hadn't had a real personal relationship with his bandmates outside of business in decades, but he refused to let them erase what he'd built, insisting he'd covered for them when their lifestyles were out of control. And now he felt they were trying to take his share of the name and the band. In late 2025, that dispute went before an arbitrator, and the ruling landed in early 2026 and did not go Mick's way. A retired federal judge acting as an arbitrator rejected all of Mars's claims and found that Motley Crue were within their rights to remove him from the band's corporate structure after he stopped touring. The decision, held under a band agreement Mars himself helped put in place back in 2008, where he forfeited any claim to ongoing touring income once he chose to step off the road. Financially, the ruling ordered the guitarist to repay more than $750,000 in unrecouped tour advances for shows he didn't play, while also valuing his ownership stake in the band at just over $500,000. After the numbers were balanced, he ended up owing his former bandmates roughly $250,000, and the band immediately moved to have the arbitration award confirmed in court, publicly declaring themselves fully vindicated, legally, financially, and even in terms of the lip-singing accusations he'd made. Looking back over 4 decades of drama, one thing becomes pretty clear with Motley Crue. The conflict was just never background noise. It was part of the engine. They've swung at their peers, they've sparred with critics, mocked younger bands, and even ended up in arbitration with a founding member, all while insisting it's just rock and roll doing what rock and roll does. Whether you see this as proof that they're unapologetically authentic or permanently stuck in their own mythology probably depends on how big of a fan you are of the band. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and which feud do you think crossed the line, and does all this chaos make Motley Crue more interesting to you or too hard to defend? That brings us to the end of today's video, guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again on Rock and Roll True Story. Sticker.